So let's talk about sort of the responsibility. You're playing fictional characters, but this is definitely a historic, event that happened, and while not necessarily the details of what you guys go through happened, but I just wonder if you had the responsibility, how you handled the responsibility of playing a real life soldier in a real life situation. Talk to that.
Well, I think it wasn't a, like when you talk about the responsibility of it, I think that was always an inspiration rather than a burden. And as you say, we're playing fictional characters, but the story itself is an amalgamation of first person accounts. So basically everything that you see in the film happened to someone, it's just it didn't happen to these two soldiers particularly. But yeah, I mean we were aware of the context, of course, and as I say, it was always an inspiration rather than a burden to think of the men who fought.
Same for you?
Same for me. I mean, we're not playing Sam's granddad or anything like that, and we're not playing real life people. But I mean, I guess that it was a real thing what happened. But I think the goal for me was just to make it look as natural as possible and make it believable as possible as a human rather than a fixed person.
So Sam said something yesterday that really sort of chimed with me, which is he said technique geared towards emotion, which I guess sums up the movie because it's a virtuoso filmmaking, but the emotion of it is so tangible for the audience. Do you think that helped sort of, I wonder if you could talk about your process with him in terms of, because I think a lot is going to be said about the technicality of the movie, but I wonder if you could talk about working your characters with him as a director. Because it feels very much like a character-driven movie. So
yeah, I think. Well, firstly, to talk of Sam, like I think it's that's a lovely kind of way of putting it. Technique for emotion. But I've never worked with someone who has such an understanding of the architecture of storytelling. As you said, he's a very sensitive and empathetic man himself, but he has this. In terms of storytelling, kind of he understands the maths of it as to kind of how and when you give information to. Get across a reaction or to influence a reaction, an emotional reaction from the audience. So that was just amazing to kind of be around that mind as he's crafting the story. But in terms of everything, as you said, there's so much technicality that it's an amazing achievement by all the crew to kind of film the film in the way that we did. But it was always it was like why always came before the how in terms of. When Roger and Sam began, they both just thought, okay, what is best for the story, and let's worry about the technicality. It was never sort of self-advertising this, the one-shot nature of it. And so in terms of like our work, I think we just had to focus on them being, on the humans that they were. Like that these weren't just soldiers. These were men before they were soldiers, and they're men at the core of it. And that's that's how I approach Schofield, and so much of who he is as a man is what you don't see, and it's his home and what he's left behind. So for me, it was most important to, in discussions with Sam and also for myself to just suss out what that home is.
So let's see if we can tap down around the spoilers, but you have like a really intense scene. I mean, they're all intense, but the one scene to end all scenes. How did you handle that? Did you guys shoot in continuity? Do you know when it was coming up? Were you different for that particular moment that you had to sort of capture on screen? Because it's a beautiful moment that you guys play, but I wonder, like, leading up to it must have been anxiety.
Yeah, we did shoot in order pretty much. But it's hard. I mean, I don't want to say what that scene is, or there's a lot of scenes that are pretty intense. We don't want to give too much away in terms of spoilers and stuff, but I know what bit you're talking about.
Yeah.
And,
did you have to do anything different? Because I don't want to elaborate about it.
No, it was just, it was a scene that we didn't rehearse. We literally read it through once, sort of roughly, in a rehearsal room, like months before we started shooting that scene. And I remember the first take we did, that scene in particular is 9 minutes long. And that was, I think, the longest scene that we did. And it was very, very difficult. And I remember the first time they called cut, I couldn't stop crying because I was just so completely wrapped up in what my character was going through, both of us. Very, very difficult, and it sort of played on my mind a little bit even after finishing, the film. And it was only until I saw the final cut it made me realise again that we were only making a film. And then that's the beautiful thing about these one takes. As an actor, you really do get lost in it, and you just become fully wrapped up in what you're doing, who you're playing, that world you're in. And I just got lost in it. It's a beautiful feeling, but that particular scene was very
No, it's
scary.
marvelous. It really is.
Oh, thank
If
you.
I had a hat, I would take it off.
Thank
But
you.
as a movie nerd, I know you guys, as actors, you have enough, but I can't sit here and not talk to you guys. Can you tell me a bit about what the dynamic between Sam and Roger Deakins is like on set? If you give me a little bit of a morsel of a taste, because I would just pay to like sit there and watch them work.
Me too.
You got paid to play a character and watch them work.
Well, watching the thing about the both of them is that with their dynamic, they know each other very well now. So Sam said, often the best days they barely talked.
Yeah.
It's a kind of unconscious, intuitive relationship. But I think the thing that unifies the pair of them, working together and in themselves, is despite them have their reputation precedes them, but they just love what they do. Like, and I think there's no sort of personality kind of or reputation or here's my CV. It's just sort of, it is what it is, just because they love what they do and they're constantly curious and they're constantly excited by the possibility of making stuff. And that was really inspiring to be around, because when you've got the folks leading the ship that curious about how it's done and they're that experienced and they're that good at what they do, it just makes you more curious and you want to stay hungry.
All right. Well, my time's up. Pleasure talking to you guys.
Thank you very
Fantastic
much.
job.
Cheers.
All right, and thank you for that.
No, thank you.